Do you like prog metal? If you do, then stick around because we're going to be doing the ranking albums of the #1 prog metal artist of all time. It's Dream Theater. Let's rock. Welcome back to Rockers Beer Review. Today we're going to do another special album ranking, and this time it's for the progressive metal band Dream Theater. So I hope if you're watching this, you know all about Dream Theater. You've got numerous albums by them. We've actually got 14 studio albums by Dream Theater. They're still going strong, and they're a great band. I got into them right near the beginning in 1992 when Images and Words came out, which was their second album with their new and current singer James LaBrie. I actually saw them on that tour, and they played the Marquee Club in London. That shows how long ago it was, because the Marquee Club is no more. Brilliant band, real technical sort of showcase. Every one of the band members is absolutely excels in what they do. Now, they really sort of started this sort of new progressive metal movement, and there's been hundreds of bands that have tried to, imitate them really in terms of their style, but really no one has really got as close as Dream Theater has in terms of their technical wizardry, amazing guitars, keyboards, bass playing, drumming, singing. Everything is absolutely top notch, and they really taken the spirit of those sort of 70s progressive rock bands and put a much more metal sort of slant on it. So let's get started, shall we? Dream Theater, they were formed in. They're actually, some of their members are from Long Island in New York, and actually my cousin Ian went to school with the guitarist John Petrucci. So there's that sort of strange sort of tie up there really. It was quite amazing that I found out only a few years ago that my cousin actually went to school with him because he was from Long Island as well. He moved to Long Island in the 80s. So let's, without further ado, let's get the rankings on, starting with album number 14. And album number 14 is a relatively new album. It's called The Astonishing. It's the 14th place mainly because it's just so overblown. It's a double album. There's loads of tracks on it. It's obviously a heavy concept, almost in the sort of almost like 2112 by Rush in terms of its sort of epic, overblown, futuristic sort of dystopian sort of setup. I mean, I don't understand what on earth it's going on about. I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't either. I don't think it's necessarily sounds bad, but it's just the fact that there's so many songs and lots of little, because it's a concept album, there's lots of little musical interludes on it, and because of that it's really difficult to pick out any of the songs. So it's really difficult to sort of say, yeah, that's a great song, just because there's so much on it. I think it's just a little too much, and I think obviously from that they realised that they probably overdid it a little bit. So that's in 14th position. In 13th position, we're going back now to the beginning of the 2000s with Train of Thought. Now, a lot of people really like this album, but for me, I find it really difficult to get into. There's a lot more crunchy guitars in there, a lot less keyboards. Songs are generally a little bit more shorter. I do like As I Am, it's a great opener, but for me, it doesn't quite do it for me. It's a little bit too harsh and too heavy and less progressive than a lot of their other albums. So Train of Thought makes 13th position. In 12th position is another one that I know is a lot of fan favourites, but for me, just never really got it, and that is 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I mean, there's a 42-minute title track, and it's just too much, really. The whole album is over 100 minutes long. I just couldn't get into it. I think, this is what gives progressive metal a little bit of a bad sort of reputation, in the fact that it's full of fantastic technical chops, but not much melody. They sort of almost forgot about the songs. It's just a lot of different showcasing of the band's ability. And for me, it's nowhere near as sort of melodic or as songs as catchy as a lot of their other albums. So unfortunately, I'm putting it down in 12th. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that would disagree with me. And in 11th position is the album that was just titled Dream Theater. Again, this is a fairly recent album. Again, it's a little bit boring. It's a little bit Dream Theater by numbers. There's nothing really that new about it in terms of where they were going. I think the key track for me is Enemy Inside, but it's just a little bit, I wouldn't call it, you can't really call Dream Theater bland, but it's just almost like they're becoming a sort of a cover version of themselves a little bit, in terms of there's just the sort of songs that you feel that you've heard before but slightly better on other albums. So 11th position is the title tracked album Dream Theater. In 10th position is Systematic Chaos. Again, it's similar to the last one, a little bit like Dream Theater by numbers, really. I do like their sort of slower, more melodic stuff. So songs like Forsaken and Repentant are for me, they're more atmospheric, sort of slightly slower, rather than a sort of heavy, really shredding type of tracks. I don't know whether it's me just getting a bit old, but they're the tracks that do it for me on this album. But again, a lot of the other songs on there, a little bit Dream Theater by numbers. So Systematic Chaos in 10th position. In 9th position, we're going right back almost to the beginning, but to Falling Into Affinity. Now, this album came out, it was seen as quite commercial. There's some great tracks. I love Peruvian Skies. I love the sort of epic, it's sort of like, it's epic, but also a little bit funky, Lines in the Sand, and that's actually got Doug Pinnock of King's X singing backing vocals on it. Even the Desmond Child, famous for all the sort of stuff he's done with Aerosmith and those sort of bands, Alice Cooper, Bon Jovi, he came in to see if he could to co-write some music, and he co-wrote one song called You Not Me, which, even though it was seen as their most commercial song, I think it's actually a pretty good song, quite like it. So Falling Into Affinity gets my 9th position. In 8th position is their latest album, Distance Over Time. After they did the very overblown Astonishing, they sort of returned to the form a little bit, just some really great songs. And the highlight for me being things like Barstool Warrior. I think it's one of the best songs they've done for a long while. A really good return of form, and I'm interested to see how they take that album onto the next album and see where they go from there, because I think it was a real return to form. In 7th position is Octavium. There's quite a few, for some reason they must have been listening to a lot of Muse, because there's 2 songs on here that sound very much like Muse, heavily influenced, that very sort of style. So if you like Muse, you probably would like those songs. There are a couple of songs that also are really sort of commercial, trying to sound a bit more like U2. But the last 2 songs, the 2 long epics of the album, are really, really good. And I think it's a bit of an overlooked album, and I quite enjoy it. So Octavium is my 7th position album by Dream Theater. In 6th position is their debut, When Dream and Day Unite. A lot of people would put this further back, but I just, I got into Dream Theater when Images and Words came out, and I actually got this album pretty much at the same time. And I just thought it was a great sort of progressive metal album. It followed the sort of blueprint that other bands like early Queensryche and Fate's Warning were 2 bands I was into, and I thought it sounded very similar to them. Yes, they had a different singer than James LeBrie, and his sort of tone is a lot different. He's almost got a more soulful voice, and the production on it is a bit dodgy, but it's got lots of those great different time signatures and everything else that Dream Theater were famous for. And I think that just the songs are good. If you get hold of the bootleg where they sort of reimagined this album live, it does sound even better. But there's some great songs. Killing Hand and A Fortune in Lies, which is their sort of first epic song, are really great songs. And I really like Dream and Day Unite. I recently, when I was going through all of these albums, I thought I'd listen to them all again just to sort of refresh my memory of them. And I thought, actually, I think it's better than I remembered it as. So if you are a fan of Dream Theater and you haven't heard that for a while, then give it a listen, because I think it's worthy of your time. When Dream and Day Unite in 6th position. In 5th position is A Dramatic Turn of Events. Now, this was their first album without Mike Portnoy in it, who left, and was replaced. And I just think this is I mean, it's trying to get back to a little bit like their sort of classic Images and Words album. It's got that same sort of structure in terms of the songs. But songs like Breaking All Illusions, I think it's the best song that they've done since Learning to Live, right back in it from Images and Words. It's a superb song. It's one of my favourite Dream Theater songs. And I think, you know, it's their recovery album after their sort of, you know, main songwriter and almost band leader Mike Poinay left, the drummer. So they did pretty well, I think, to come back with that album. In fourth position is Mike Poinay's last album. That was Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I admit that, you know, if you look at the rankings, they're sort of, you know, early 2000s, sort of almost like, you know, the first sort of decade really of that of the 2000s. Their albums I don't think were as good as their earlier ones, but I think this one was a real return to form. I think Best of Times is a brilliant track. It sounds very much like Rush, which is what a lot of their earlier stuff was like, and even the Nightmare to Remember, the first track off the album, is a really great epic. It just sounds really good, nice production, and it's just got all those elements. Count of Tuscany is the last song on the album. It is, if you can get over the slightly cheesy lyrics, again, structure-wise of the song, it's just really, really good. It's Dream Theater at the best, and I really like Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I think it's a really good album. There's no real filler on it. I think it's good, and guess what? It gets my fourth position. Okay, so we're heading into the top three, and I don't think there'll be that many people that will have their top three that different to this. So in third position is the album Awake. So this was a great follow-up to Images and Words, seen as their classic album. It's a little bit more heavy. It was the last with the keyboard player Kevin Moore. There's some great tracks though: Lifting Shadows of a Dream, Space Divest, something a little bit different, Innocent Fading, and then you've got that real sort of heavy burst of the Mirror, which almost sounds at the beginning like it's Pantera. It's a great album, and it's chock full of really good songs. So I give Awake my third position. In second position, and again, a lot of people may put this in first, but I think Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, is the perfect concept album, and it gets my number 2 position. It's got great songs, the whole structure and mood is just really good, and it's just them at their sort of height. It takes a lot of their songwriting but puts it into a very sort of a well-written sort of concept. Sometimes like their concept for The Astonishing just was a bit overblown, but this was just about right. Time's right, the songs were good, there was no real sort of fillers in there, wasn't too much. And it's Dream Theater nearly at their very best. But their very best has to be number 1 position, Images and Words. This is all killer and no filler. You know, it's the real blueprint of progressive metal. Every band that is in the progressive metal sort of arena wants to release their own Images and Words, because really this is it's the highlight, even though it's the second album. They came out in 92, all those years ago, but it's still, I don't think Dream Theater have not bettered it, and there's not many progressive metal bands that have got anywhere near it. So Learning to Live is probably one of my favourite Dream Theater songs. It's a great epic to the end of the album, but there's so many good songs on it. Pull Me Under is brilliant, Surrounded, Take the Time, Metropolis, they're just really good songs, and it's just hit the balance just right. It's sort of very much taking that sort of Metallica and Iron Maiden sort of heaviness and mixing it with those sort of 70s bands, with classic Rush, with classic Yes, and it just works. It just works. You wonder why the bands didn't really do it even before then. It is a brilliant album, and I'll put the link somewhere in here. It'll be either up here or up here for my review of Images and Words, a bit more detailed review on a track by track basis. But that is my ranking of Dream Theater albums. Is there any Dream Theater fans out there? Have you stumbled upon this video because you're a subscriber of mine and you follow a lot of the beer reviews that I do, or maybe some of the classic rock reviews? and you don't really know Dream Theater, give them a try. Obviously, if nothing else, Images and Words is really the starting point for any Dream Theater fan, or even any Dream person who might be into that sort of music. I mean, you don't have to be big on progressive music. If you like Iron Maiden, if you like Metallica, if you like Rush, if you like Marillion, all of those bands, it's almost like all mixed together, and that's what comes out is Dream Theater. I love them. I think they're great, and I hope there's a lot of people out there like them too. If you like this ranking and you want to see more, then please subscribe to the channel. We do lots of different classic rock and heavy metal band rankings, and there's always more to come because there's so many great bands out there. They've got a great body of work, and I hope to see you on the next video. So until then, keep on rocking.